Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Clapper, General Flynn, I want to thank both of you for being here, and thank you for your service helping protect our nation. And I want to also thank the men and women, both military and civilian, that serve with you both. There are a number of topics I'd like to discuss, and I'd like to start, Director Clapper, by focusing on Al-Qaeda. And you said previously, quote, sustained counterterrorism pressure, key organizational setbacks, and the emergence of other power centers of the global violent extremist movement have put core Al-Qaeda on a downward trajectory since 2008. And I wanted to ask you, what, in your view, is the definition of core Al-Qaeda?
My definition of core Al-Qaeda is the leadership group that has been essentially in the Fatah in Pakistan. That is precisely what is meant by that, and clearly they have been profoundly degraded, not eliminated by any stretch. And so that area, in my view, remains the ideological center for Al-Qaeda, but not the operational center any longer.
What is the value of that distinction? Are other radical Islamic terrorist groups any less dangerous to Americans than what the administration is defining as core Al-Qaeda?
Well, I think an organization like Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP, poses a much greater sort of tactical, near-term operational threat to the homeland than does the ideological center of core Al-Qaeda in the Fatah in Pakistan.
Given the recent revelation in the Washington Post that the leader of the Ansar al-Sharia branch in Derma, Libya, is the terrorist Abu Sufyan al-Kumu, who is a former detainee, as you know, at Guantanamo Bay and trained in an Osama bin Laden camp in Yemen, and was in fact on Al-Qaeda's payroll, shouldn't his group also be considered part of core Al-Qaeda?
Well, they're not. And of course, core Al-Qaeda, the central leadership picks and chooses who is among the wannabes or are actually knighted, or if you will, so designated as an Al-Qaeda organization. So there are a lot of these organizations that profess extremism, have in some cases the same goals, but are not actually a part of Al-Qaeda. Another one is the Muhammad Jamal organization in Egypt. It's a violent organization, but not yet a part of Al-Qaeda formally, to the extent that that has meaning.
So the determination of core Al-Qaeda, who is making that? Because, I mean, it would seem to me the characteristics of training with Al-Qaeda, being on their payroll, and professing allegiance.
Zawahiri is as the ideological leader, is probably, if you had to pick somebody, is in charge of that. And of course, he recently essentially excommunicated Al-Qaeda in Iraq, or ISIL as it's known. So he is the designee for deciding who is and who isn't Al-Qaeda.
I was troubled by some recently declassified testimony that Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Martin Dempsey gave to the House Armed Services Committee, in which, when General Dempsey was asked about the ability of the military to target the terrorists who attacked us in Benghazi, General Dempsey's response was that those individuals were not participants or in leadership of core Al-Qaeda, and therefore were not under the authorization for use of military force, and so the military didn't have the ability to target those individuals. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I mean, we have targeted them in an intelligence sense. Certainly that's been, and in which the DOD, DIA participates in tracking these these people. I don't know about the legalities of whether I could actually shoot at them.
Given that these terrorists are professing allegiance to al-Qaeda, at least portions of them are led by Kumu and others who with ties directly to bin Laden, and given that they murdered 4 Americans, does it make sense that we should be in any way restrained in going after them and bringing them to justice?
So who we can go after in terms of capturing or killing is not an intelligence call. Our view is if they are terrorists of any stripe, we are going to do our best to collect as much intelligence on them as we possibly can.
General Flynn, do you have a view on the same question?
I agree with the director. The only thing I would add, and to kind of along your line of questioning, is that we also have to look at the ideology that exists within these groups. You know, they share an ideology, and I would add that to the definition of core. It's not just the senior leadership in al-Qaeda, but it's in Pakistan, but it's also this shared ideology that many of these extremist groups have, and I think that that's something that we have to consider as we look at every single one of them.
And would you consider the Ansar al-Sharia branch sharing that ideology?
I would.
One final topic I wanted to address, which is Iran, and there was some discussion recently. Director Clapper, I'm very concerned that the joint plan of action we're going down with Iran is making the same mistakes that the United States made with respect to North Korea, and indeed is being negotiated by many of the very same people. And by relaxing the sanctions against North Korea, we allowed the funds to fly to North Korea, which in turn allowed them to develop nuclear weapons. Is there any reason we should expect different results in Iran than this same policy achieved in North Korea?
Well, I'm not here to critique U.S. policy, and I will just say that I don't know how it'll come out in Iran. We, for our part, are very committed to ensuring that we monitor compliance with whatever agreements that are forged.
You know, I would note, you said that you didn't want to critique U.S. policy, but is there any reason to believe that the outcome in Iran would be any different from North Korea as a substantive matter?
Iran is a completely different country than North Korea. So yes, it could. The outcome could be different.
But do the differences make it more or less likely that they would comply? For phrased differently, and I'm at the end of my time, so this will be my last question. Phrased differently, in your view, if Iran were to succeed in acquiring a nuclear weapon, what do you view as the likelihood that they would use that nuclear weapon to murder innocent people?
That is, and first of all, they are not near acquiring a nuclear weapon and would be even farther from it, assuming these negotiations pan out. But as to your question, that's an imponderable, sir. I can't answer it.
Well, I will say I think the odds are unacceptably high, and this current path is exceedingly dangerous for our national security. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. Senator Vitter.